Hey YouTube, good morning. Memorial Park, first impressions, 10.69.3. Let's give it a drive. It's 8 o'clock on Thursday morning. I've just got today to film. I'm heading out of town again. I've been traveling a lot. See, we got a car coming from the right. It needs to probably yield to. We have a pedestrian across the way. Let's see what happens here. It's waiting, it's waiting, it's waiting. Okay, they nudged. Definitely this is one of those human interaction scenarios. Waiting, okay, that car's going, and we're kind of really blocking the lane here. But it was just fine. In this rural kind of neighborhood environment, that sort of behavior is just fine. Let's see if it's patient here. It's kind of hugging the left side a little bit more than it should. Like I'm looking right down the yellow line in front of me. I feel like I should be a little bit further over to the right. But that's just kind of the way it put itself in this turn. And if you look, the car's kind of even got a little bit of a right vector there to show that it knows it needs to get back over to the right. But we're just waiting on a stoplight here. Looks like we got school buses on the other side and everything. But while we're here, yeah, this version has a lot of updates for the vision stack in it. A lot of kind of tweaks. You know, I don't think I see any new functions, like things that it can do that it didn't do before. It's all improvements. So a lot of occupancy network improvements, a lot of photon, improvements with the way the networks are created, some acceleration and longitudinal control inputs. Okay, here now it's getting over to the right, which is good, especially with that car coming. That was really good behavior there. Fishtailing a little bit. It should come over to the right because we're taking a right turn. It's got a green protected, so it should not stop unnecessarily. And away we go. Interesting, a little bit of a pause there. I got a couple brake taps there, almost like it was hesitant to accelerate into this car ahead of me. That felt unnatural, but I think what it was doing was adjusting its acceleration profile based on this car in front of me. So completely fine. I just felt brake taps that perhaps as a human I wouldn't have done, but it did it just fine. So yeah, I think that this build is a whole lot of vision stack improvements is what this is, and tweaks to how they solve problems with the occupancy network and what it can see. There's a lot of questions out there we have about removing the ultrasonic sensors and how the occupancy network is truly going to compensate for not having I don't want to call it visibility, but sensors in those low areas like in a garage, and especially when you need some memory, like while you may approach something when you're parking your car at night, when you're leaving the next morning, things could be different, and the car, at least at the moment, doesn't have any sort of remembering what it saw on the way in last night. So I guess we'll just wait and see. I don't know if they're going to add additional sensors in the future or if they think vision is good enough. Andre did a good explanation that kind of took a little bit of the mystery away from me. He talked about, supply chain. He talked about the cost and the ultimate, do you need them? And if not, just get rid of them early. And that seemed to be the logic that they're going with at this moment. But I think there are going to be some interesting things to watch with regards to how accurate the vision system can give you to the things we used to use them for before. This car does have sensors on it, so I don't know if they're going to take away the use of the sensors if they exist. I don't think they're doing that yet. Kind of like with radar, they took away the... I'm just making sure our nav route is there. I don't know if you noticed this flicker on my screen. I've already tweeted about this. All of us are seeing it. When you move the screen, there's definitely some refresh kind of issues going on here. I do have my normal right turn here. Should be using a blinker. There it goes. And coming on around. And now that it does this, I'm going to go ahead and delete the waypoint I created in order to get it to do this turn. The optional routes, that was a very good pause for crossing traffic there. The optional routes that the car does on this version did not propose the traditional route I use here, so I needed to use a waypoint. And then, of course, delete the waypoint. And this should work out just fine, yep. And there you get a good view of the optional routes there. I'm going to take the preferred one there rather than that other one. Now it looks like we're going to be going to an unprotected left here with a green light with some oncoming cars, but I've got a lead car here kind of helping me. Let's see how this goes. Yeah, this is going to be straightforward. I think that car is probably going to jump for one of these gaps, and then we'll have to decide if we're going to jump for a gap also or wait for the arrow. Okay, now we got a yellow, so we should wait. Good. I think that the display is definitely starting to show a lot more. And I know this isn't the first video on 69.3. Many of you have watched some other ones that were put out yesterday before I got home. And I think a lot of people have commented on this, and I agree with them. The display looks really good, a lot more detail, maybe a little bit higher contrast in some areas. You know, the release notes made it sound like it's seeing things further away. I haven't done any sort of analysis to measure or see that it sees things further away, but it sure seems to be looking a lot better. We definitely saw some glitches on some of the other videos. You know, this isn't a perfect build. Green arrow. Let's see how this turn feels. Absolutely fine. No issues there. So, you know, I'd say it's not necessarily a perfect build. A lot of people are seeing some wonky behavior, but overall, I think it's been a pretty good for a .0 release. Usually it takes a .1 or a .2 to iron out some of the bugs, you know, such as the glitchy screen, things like that. I imagine they're going to fix that right away. So we got a couple situations coming up just to point them out for those that don't watch these videos all the time. I've got two roundabouts that are not mapped on here. The map data says it's just a road going straight, but we've got some roundabouts where vision kind of has to solve the problem. So I'm going to stay in full screen view so you can see how the map handles it here. A couple lead cars to perhaps give us a clue. All right, as we enter, it should roll this. It really should not stop here. It should roll. It should roll. Now I've got a truck to deal with that is in there. It needs to, now it rolls. Okay, that's fine. It did it, but a yield is designed to not have traffic stop. And this is going straight, so we're gonna go around and straight. I may actually disengage to drive through. No, actually, I think I'm gonna let it go this way today because we have a school zone up here with a flashing yellow, and I wanna do that. So here's the roundabout. Flashing yellow school zone. Times are on. It needs to know how to do this in the future. Let's see what it's waiting on here. Okay, it's stopping for that flashing yellow. Not horrible, but there it is. Okay, so I'm gonna capture that, give them a disengagement just so it captures it with a disengagement. It needs to be able to do that in the future. And here's the end school zone. So right here is where the speed should go from 15 back to 30 when those flashing yellow lights are on. I know they're just not there yet, but that is, you know, a function for a full, you know, robotaxi fleet, that they're going to have to get to some true sign recognition like that. I don't know if that's going to involve optical character recognition, where it's actually reading the sign versus just recognizing them through neural network training. I know there was a conversation, I believe it was also with James, and it might have been Dave Lee. And if it wasn't Dave Lee, I'm sorry, but it was a conversation about reading signs being something where GPT-3 or 4 could probably be used, and then apply some actual logic onto the optical character recognition. Okay, so the first flashing yellow, which was a school zone, it completely stopped for. So let's see what it does to this flashing yellow here. Didn't even pause. Yeah, so it's different behavior there. Granted, I had a lead car that was slowing down for the previous one. Here's the second flashing yellow. Yeah, that's kind of expected there. Okay, coming up on this intersection here, we're going to be turning right. Got a pedestrian on the other side of the street. It's now a right on red scenario with traffic it needs to wait for. Got a creep limit wall coming up there. Look at that wall, kind of at an angle there. That's interesting. Obviously, it's kind of connecting the lines. And here's our right on the red scenario. Nice. It did a good job there. Interesting where it put that creep limit It was a little further out than I think it probably should have been, but when the geometry of an intersection isn't square, they're still trying to kind of put the limit where it makes sense that you can go without being in harm's way and still maximize the B-pillar footage here. So we should be turning left, and we are. This is an all-way stop with nobody here. That was a nice full stop. Okay, and this next one, if you see, we have a stop sign on the left that is not for us. It's for that other car, and oh, it waited. Okay, that one, it shouldn't have done that. We had the right of way. I wonder if the fact that, and there's a car right behind me that is like, don't you know the rules of the road? Okay, this speed limit here is also not accurate, 15, so I'm having to manually scroll this up. Yeah, so some map data issues still can kind of create non-human-like behavior. You know, how to solve that is to just, I guess, get away from map data as much as you can. But one little piece of map data that you depend on can really just throw it for a wrench. All right, so we have a little bit of construction going on over here on the right. I kind of like to look for like occupancy network sort of, you know, little gray piles that they are using these days to show that it sees things that it doesn't know how to recognize. I think I just saw a trash can in the middle of the road just about 3 seconds back. That was interesting. That car is sticking out pretty far, and that was good. It created a slight little curved trajectory around it. That truck had a tail hitch that was actually almost into the drivable space, and it still honored it even though that car wasn't moving. That was great. Some of the things that have changed on the full screen display here, we have our next navigation intention, which is up in front and center now, which is a much better location. And in the right hand side, we have the you know, the kind of the ETAs and the times for the destination, which I think is a great placement, which keeps you from having to necessarily swipe back and forth to see the navigation screen. All right, should just proceed through this green light without any issues. Very good. We gotta see where that car just turned. It's slashed off to where it's not supposed to be drivable space, except for when you kind of have the middle turn lane there. It's very interesting how this gets painted here, because in the car it kind of puts it in between yellow lines, but it almost makes it look like you could go there. It doesn't do any sort of hash marks. And I don't know what that glitch is on my, that was interesting, on my blinker camera there on the right hand side. Take a scroll a few seconds back if you missed that. I'm going to turn on the blinker here just again, just to see if it's still doing it. It is. Now, interesting, as soon as I put my blinker on there, it tried to jump out of the lane. I didn't intend for it to do that, but that would be interesting if my blinker is now controlling some of the FSD navigation, even though I have a navigate on here to get into a turn lane. That's interesting. See, I got the blinker on here again, and it shouldn't be on. All right, this is very dense traffic, kind of, you know, two-way street, morning rush hour kind of traffic here, and it's doing a really good job mapping everything. So that disengagement back there was me playing with the blinker camera, that I was seeing some glitching into that in that screen there. A couple potholes here. I think I saw on Frenchie's video this morning, it ran right over a pretty good big pothole. Still no recognition of that with the occupancy network or anything like that I can see. One day, maybe we will see that. Same with speed bumps. I think it's still recognizing speed bumps, but it's definitely not mapping them that I've seen yet. Okay, it needs to get over a little bit. Okay, it did a fine job there. It was interesting how it did it at the last second. We have a nice lead car here to kind of give us a good path to follow, but all right. Coming up on the green light and almost at our destination here. Very nice. Wow. So, you know, I don't have any complaints on that drive other than still not doing any of the school zone speed limits, but it's never done that. It hasn't been able to do that yet. I just one day we'll try this sort of stuff, and it'll come back to it. I don't know what it'll be like when it does it, but I'm sure we'll see something in the release notes that talk about the reading of signs and handling different, you know, speed limit signs that have time limits or specific restrictions on them. You know, there's a lot of signs that are like that, you know, including, you know, different right on red scenarios, other time-based traffic flow logic, when you can turn right, when you can't. So we have a long way to go, perhaps, on that type of vision stack. All right, I've got the FSDBeta return from Memorial Park in there. I'm going to let this map readjust. As soon as the route readjusts, we will start the second leg. It's taking a second to reroute here. It really wouldn't matter. And there we go. All right, we are engaged for round 2. And if you notice, my dragging of the screen moved I got to pay attention to the road there. Watching me. All right, this creep limit, obviously, see how he does that geometry there? All right, we're way out. Okay, we need to wait from the right, and I think it sees these cars no problem. Look at that median network it put in there. That is inaccurate. That is not a median well, there is a little bit of a median there, but I wouldn't go to it. I'd stay right here. So, yeah, see how it's putting that out there? That's interesting. That's a new visualization there, and it's very consistently measuring it too. Okay, I am clear from the right, but not from the left now, and it should be waiting, and it is. It's doing a good job. I might lose my opportunity from the right unless it gives me a good acceleration right now. It could go for it. Give me a good acceleration. Go. And it did it. And look how that median network adjusted. So that median, I'm going to just snap that in case they want to take a look at it. Was inaccurate. Now it needs to go straight here. Oh, look what it just did. Okay, whoa, now look at that. It knows it got stuck. Oh, this is part of this lane mapping network that it talked about. I am now in the wrong lane. I'm not supposed to be here. And look what the lane mapping network is telling it. It's sort of like, I know I'm in the left lane, but I know I want to go right. Yeah, okay, there's a car behind me now, so if I get a green arrow, I'm going to have to give it the disengagement and let it and go that way just for traffic courtesy here. And, okay, so I had to tap the accelerator because it was not, I thought once the light went green, it might have just gone ahead and proceeded, but it didn't. So that was unfortunate. So what happened is it got impatient around stop traffic and didn't realize that its alternate route was basically putting itself in a turn lane. But as soon as it got into the turn lane, it sort of recognized it. And there was a release note about that saying that the lane markings were being included into its lane decision network. So how that manifests itself is going to be very interesting to watch, but I think we witnessed it right there. As soon as it jumped in that lane and it saw that big paint, it gave the trajectory that it needed to turn left, even though it was not in accordance with what the planner wanted to do. But then you got to watch its indecision about how do I get out of here. But once the light turned green with a green left arrow, in my opinion, it should have gone ahead and turned left and honored the traffic laws and not try to break the law and jump out of that lane. So that would be the way I would solve it, other than not getting in the lane in the first place. But that was a good one to see. You never know what you got to get on these. I wouldn't have ever expected that to happen, but just the way the scenario developed. Okay, so now we're unprotected left. We got to yield to these cars on this other side. We have some pedestrians on the right. He's got his blinker on. And, okay, look at that. Oh, go, 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 go. Nice. So it took a chance with a gap that was created by a car that was turning left and that was waiting on pedestrians. Very, very nice the way it handled that. All right. What are we going to get next? So there are definitely some good videos out there that John Gibbs, Dr. Know-It-All, and Dave Lee and James Dalma have done on the deep dive on the release notes. I do think it's good. I don't know if you saw that car coming out. He was actually creeping, human driver creeping to get out. It just kind of startled me as he was creeping out. It's good to have a nice long form video to talk about what these release notes might mean. And when I say might mean, you know, honestly, James and John and I and others are interpreting what we read with our experience, not necessarily knowing if we're 100% accurate, but I think that, you know, converting the terms longitudinal and latitude and what a gore means and all those different terms that are thrown out there, it's good to listen to some folks talk about it and learn a little bit along the way. I highly recommend watching some of those videos to deep dive into this. And much like, you know, when you get release notes that are as complex as we got on this release, I think that you have to kind of go over them a few times. And honestly, now that I've had a couple interactions, I'm going to think a little bit more about what those release notes mean and how they actually play themselves out here. Just going to double check my route. We're going straight. That is correct. It really does feel like they're continually making improvements. Okay, look how this car ahead of me crept over to get away from these cars, and look, the Ego car is getting right on the yellow line to give those guys some room. So that was a good example of what a human does around those cars when there's no oncoming car, and what the Ego car currently is doing to give traffic room when there's no opposing car coming around. You know, it will cross a yellow line if it needs to. And that was a good example of both a human going over the line and the Ego car going right up to the line. Yeah, this is good. A lot of these sort of obstructions and construction workers, like this van right here, it gave a nice trajectory around that van. You know, it was one of those scenarios, a door could open at any second. There was construction workers getting gear out of the car. Flashing yellow coming up with a couple of cars parked on the side, giving them a nice trajectory around the parked cars. Very smooth. But the point I was making is they're continually improving all of these little nuances about it, but there are still some very complex corner cases that keep popping up that it's just making the wrong decision occasionally. You know, lanes is a tough one, you know, but it does show, we should be turning right here, that the technology can work with the right training data and set. The prediction, no, it should not be stopping here at all. Okay, I'm gonna slap that one on there too. We just got to get the training data in there for each of these use cases and identify them. You know, the car is not learning on its own. We're not at self-supervised learning yet. The car is taking training data, use cases that have been identified and that needs to be solved, and they solve them. It's just how many of these corner cases are out there that we know and don't know about. It's very clear. It should just go. See how far out this creep network is. See how that creep network is actually into the road there. And that's what it felt like. I felt like I was continuing to creep far too far out in the lane. All right, here's one of those scenarios where I am right in the middle of the road. I've even got two stoplights that shows, hey, there's kind of two lanes here, but I'm doing the lane hog thing, and there's not much room to go around me to the right, even though I am proceeding straight here. Yeah. So that lane centering is not optimal. I do have an unmarked road scenario. I'll try to film for you guys to see if that's improved. I have heard there were some improvements on that, but we shall see in the video of unmarked roads. Okay, coming up on the yellows again. In the past, these yellows have showed up red just a little bit, and there's a little flash of red. So it's still seeing red just as the yellow goes right over the car. It's not interpreting it as a red, and there was a flash of red on this one out in the distance, so it's yeah, still mixing some red in there. I don't know if that's a camera limitation or the angle or what, but it's done that consistently the whole time. And they've just programmed the car to ignore it because it's not acting like it's a stop at all. Okay, we're coming back up on this school zone, and actually there in the traffic you can see where the school zone is being registered, so that's an interesting point. We even have metadata that shows we will be going slower there, even though the Ego car is not aware of school zones yet in order to adjust its speed. So that's an interesting thing I've never thought about. It can use traffic data to help it be aware of scenarios where it might need to slow down. And actually it looks like the flashing lights have actually gone off since we were here just a few minutes ago, so it's no longer in effect. Pedestrian jumping out, very good reaction, very, very smooth. I would have done the exact same thing there. We got a emergency vehicle on the right with his lights on. See, this car is kind of creeping out, and it looks like the Ego car wants to let him go. He waved and then proceeded. I didn't do anything there. That was good behavior that allowed human behavior to fit. So this car to the right here, just to the right of the intersection, has flashing lights on. One day maybe we'll see flashing lights on these assets. So this is back to that roundabout that is not mapped, and it's doing this all on vision. Threw on a blinker there that's not required. I've got some lead cars to help me here. Oh, don't jump over there. Did you see how it almost jumped over there? It's because this map data doesn't match yet. So it's solving the problem with vision, but boy, does it want to follow that map data. Now it's confused. Now it's trying to find it. It's got it right. It just needs to go. Commit to it. There. So it's kind of like, this is what it is to be confused on map data. It's just acting really, really, okay, and it completely stopped in the crosswalk for that pedestrian there. So that was an unfortunate behavior. If you're going to stop for a pedestrian, don't do it when you're in the crosswalk. That was a very dynamic situation back there, where it was solving the problem with vision, was very unsure of itself, but it had the right answer, and it did not fall for the traps where it looked like the lane network was trying to get it to jump to the right. And had it not stopped for those pedestrians while in the crosswalk, I would have been okay with it, just a little bit hesitant. But either way, it's fascinating to watch the car work through scenarios where the map data is leading it astray. All right, unprotected left-hand turn here on Roosevelt Boulevard. Stoplight about a block away that looks like it has stopped the traffic, so it's actually got a freebie here to get to the median. It's mapped the median correctly. One car is the only issue. It should go. And if it goes for it, it should go the whole way. And it did. Nice. That was good. The light here saved it, right? It gave it the gap. It wasn't any more complicated than it needed to be, but it did not hesitate like it has in the past in some scenarios there. Every scenario on an unprotected left is different, especially based on the speed of the traffic, the gaps it sees. But so far today, these unprotected lefts have really been pretty good today. All right, so we got a truck right next to me, and there was something in the release notes about the lane positioning. And there was a day where these cars here, a beam used to jump all over the place. And look at that, we've got a semi right now that is completely filling up the B-pillar view, and it's not jumping around too much. So they've done some smoothing there, I think. That's really good to see. Really good. Okay, ooh, look at that little trajectory doing a little bit of a snake shape there. It smoothed itself out, but right when we were in the intersection, it started thinking about doing some different things, but didn't fall for it. Where the screen, wow. Okay, it needs to accelerate right there. There was a release note about this acceleration after cars pulling out of your lane. There was a car right behind me that really did not like the way I was treating that traffic. I was fine with it, honestly, but in rush hour, you get people that are in a different state of being in a hurry, and they really get up on you sometimes. But there was, to that point, there was another release note that made it sound like, you know, it was going to do some work about when a car is pulling out of your path to go around it without waiting on a car completely get out of your way. That was a pretty good scenario there. I might have to watch that a few times to see its behavior specifically, but I guess I would have wanted a little bit more of an acceleration, you know, once it was out of the way rather than just continuing. But the fact they're addressing it is good. That means they're seeing our videos, or they're seeing it with the ADAS drivers, and they realize there are improvements to be made there with that behavior. All right, there's our green light. Let's see if we get a snake wake here in the intersection again. Nope, that one was pretty rock solid. It knew where it was going. So, no issues there. That last intersection, it had some sort of calculation that confused it just for a second. And there's a little bit of a brake tap in front of this green light. Interesting. Look, brake tap. Now we're slowing for a red light. That's fine. But I was feeling brake taps probably before I would have done it as a human. But maybe it was seeing brake lights on this car in front of me. Who knows what those brake taps were about. See, the brake lights are being displayed on this asset here, and the car in front of me does not have its brake lights on. So it is projecting a stopped car by putting brake lights on it. We've seen that in previous versions. The same thing with blinkers. If a car is at an intersection and it looks like it's turning right, they will put a right turning blinker on the car, even if the car isn't doing it. So interesting to continue to watch that be used there. And as soon as that car started moving, you notice the brake lights came off of it, even though the brake lights were not even being displayed. If they're going to use brake lights for that kind of information, they need to kind of get them right, obviously, if you're going to infer intent by a blinker or something like that. So here we are with a little bit of sun in our face. I'm kind of squinting. I'm not going to pull my visor down, but I don't see any issues with the camera with that sun angle at all. So we're finishing up this drive. We just got one more unprotected left with a light that could give us an arrow. Forward facing is this next one. The previous version had some issues with forward facing, so this will be interesting to see if I get a complex situation. But to kind of sum it up a little bit, I'm actually pretty impressed with some of the smoothness here. You know, there's no new functions, but it's just another version. It's obviously obvious to me the AI team has spent a lot of time working on this vision stack, working you know, on the occupancy networks. And if any of you guys are watching, thanks for your work. I know this is a big build here. Okay, here's our forward facing. If it rolls it could go. Otherwise it needs to stop. Is it gonna go? Is it gonna go? And look at that. Gosh, if it hadn't have given me that confidence that it was going to continue that roll, if it had tapped its brakes even a little bit, I would have stopped. But because it gave a nice, confident, smooth acceleration, I let that one happen. That was a nice forward facing, but it had to give me the confidence in order for me to let it do it. That's a human safety driver behavior there that you know, I think everyone needs to use. You know, you need to be the one to save the day if something doesn't feel right. And that time the car didn't give me any clue that it didn't feel right. Anyway, I'm going to give this a thumbs up. There were a couple disengagements in there. That interesting section around the unmapped rotary hesitancy was okay, but it just ended up badly with the stopping for the pedestrian in the wrong spot. But hey, this software is getting good, guys. Thank you to the AI team, the Tesla Vision team that's working on this. I appreciate your efforts. Let's leave some comments below. Let me know what you think, and have a great day.